They weren't made for speed, they weren't made to look sleek on motorways. These were built for one thing: moving absolute mountains. Britain's heavy haul game was in a class of its own during the golden years of industrial transport, and nothing proved it more than the monsters that hauled steel, turbines, bridge beams, and full-blown buildings down country roads with nothing but torque, patience, and a driver who knew when to push and when to let the load breathe. Let's start with 5 of the absolute biggest. First up, the Scammell Contractor. If you're talking about raw hauling muscle, this thing was a British legend. Built in the 1950s and originally developed for oilfield transport in the Middle East, it quickly found a home hauling massive loads across Britain. This wasn't a lorry you just hopped in and drove. It was powered by a Rolls-Royce C8 SFL engine, a V8 diesel lump with 333 horsepower and enough low-end grunt to haul over 100 tons without breaking a sweat. It came with a 12-speed constant mesh gearbox and a 2-speed transfer case, meaning you could crawl at walking pace without stalling or ramp it up on long hauls. The Contractor had planetary hub reduction axles and a double-drive bogie setup that could take a hammering. Operators like Pickfords used them for hauling power station components, sometimes running with 5 or 6 trailers chained up in a row. No creature comforts, just metal and muscle. Now the Atkinson Venturer was a different beast altogether. This was Atkinson's answer to the heaviest of British loads, built around the 1970s and 80s when the market for serious heavy haulage rigs was getting tighter. What made it stand out was the choice of engine. Many of these were fitted with the mighty Cummins NTC 350 or 400 big cam engines, which could put out up to 400 horsepower. They were built on reinforced chassis with heavy-duty drivetrains that could pull in excess of 120 tons if spec'd right. Companies like Winds and Hina used them for transformer loads and industrial boiler moves. The Venturer wasn't flashy, but it could climb steep inclines fully loaded, crawl through tight dockyards, and hold its own with payloads that would leave most tractors spinning their wheels. These things worked best when matched with low-loader trailers that stretched the entire length of a football pitch. Third on the list is the Foden Special 6-wheeler Heavy Haul. Foden knew a thing or two about heavy gear. These trucks were essentially made to order for specialist jobs and came with military-grade specs. One of the most iconic versions featured the Gardner 8 LXB engine, a straight 8 that delivered only about 230 to 250 horsepower on paper, but the torque curve was flat and dependable, perfect for low-speed grinding work. The big selling point here was simplicity and sheer toughness. You'd see these working with firms like Robert Wynne or Edward Beck, shifting turbines and bridge sections across awkward terrain. Their all-steel cabs were basic and rugged, built around a chassis that could be reinforced with additional steel plate. They might not have had the flashy chrome or turbo scream of other rigs, but they were legendary in how they just never stopped. Then you've got the ERF NGC series, especially in its heavy haul guys. ERF built these with reinforced frames and Cummins or Detroit diesel power plants, depending on the spec and customer preference. The Detroit 8V92T 2-stroke diesel was a popular option in export markets, but the UK versions often stuck with Cummins NTE 290 or the more robust 335 units. These trucks were often seen with drawbar setups, 1 rig, 2 trailers, moving machinery or structural loads for big civil engineering firms. They featured twin-steer front axles and hub reduction rears, making them solid for balance and traction. What made the NGC stand out in heavy work was its reliability and modular build. You could bolt in upgrades, reinforce suspension, or tweak driveline components to suit whatever job was on the cards. They were a backbone of the UK's mega-load operations throughout the 80s and 90s. Rounding out the first 5, we've got the Leyland Scammell Commander. Built originally for military tank transport duties, this 8x6 monster was later adopted for civilian heavy haulage. Powered by a Perkins Eagle TX engine, or in some cases, the Rolls-Royce CV 12625 horsepower engine, the Commander was overbuilt in every sense. This wasn't a truck that ever struggled. It was designed to haul main battle tanks. Put it on British roads with a 150-ton generator behind it, and it barely noticed. Many ended up in private hands after being decommissioned by the Ministry of Defense, snapped up by specialist operators who needed something truly unstoppable. The cab sat high, the gearing was brutal, and the fuel tank was the size of a hot tub. It wasn't made for finesse, it was made to win fights with gravity. At 6th place is the Volvo F16 Global Titan. This wasn't just a scaled-up tractor unit. It was a full-blown international haulier turned domestic heavyweight. The F16 came out in the late 80s and made a serious impact thanks to its 16-litre engine pushing over 500 horsepower and an incredible torque curve that made it ideal for pulling 100-ton plus loads with stability and ease. It had a 12-speed manual box, air suspension, and was built around a reinforced chassis that could be fitted with ballast boxes and heavy couplings. Firms like Alalis and Hino put them to work on wind turbine blades, turbines, and even naval equipment. The high-roof Globetrotter cab gave drivers a bit of comfort, but when paired with hydraulic modular trailers and steering dollies, it became a machine built for shifting serious tonnage. Whether heading north through the Scottish Highlands or weaving through city centres in the early morning, the F16 got the job done. Next, we've got the Scania 143M Heavy Haul Spec, a Swedish truck, yes, but one that became a household name in British heavy haul circles during the 1990s. Operators loved it for its bulletproof 14-litre V8 engine that cranked out up to 470 horsepower. But it wasn't just the power, it was the gearing. Scania's splitter gearbox gave precise low-end control, perfect for creeping up ramps with oversized loads in tow. Hauliers kitted them out with heavy-duty rear axles, roof bars, ballast boxes, and uprated suspension to match European regulations for abnormal load work. It could often be seen pulling extended low loaders or modular trailers moving gas turbines, bridge beams, and massive site machinery. With its iconic square grille and thunderous exhaust note, the 143M was as serious as it looked, and in the hands of the right operator, it could carry the weight of a small building and still arrive early. Now let's talk about the DAF 3600 Space Cab, DAF's answer to long-haul heavy work with the added benefit of Dutch build quality. While the standard 3300 and 3600 were designed for European trunking routes, the heavy haul versions were uprated with reinforced chassis, full sleeper cabs, and the mighty ATI 11.6-litre engine, which delivered between 365 and 430 horsepower, depending on spec. The Space Cab wasn't just about driver comfort, it also gave room for monitoring kit and extra storage for crews who might spend 2 or 3 days moving a load from port to site. Used with Broshui's hydraulic extendable trailers or Goldhofer modular kits, these trucks found their niche in cross-border abnormal loads, especially between the UK and mainland Europe. They were known for their dependability, easy service access, and surprising stability at speed, even when dragging around 60 tons of steel or telecoms gear. Next up is the Seddon Atkinson Strato heavy haul variant. Seddon Atkinson might not have had the flash of Volvo or Scania, but their heavy-duty Strato units punched above their weight in the late 80s and early 90s. Fitted with Cummins L10 or N14 engines, these units often had 10-speed Road Ranger or Eaton Fuller transmissions, giving drivers the ability to control grunt at very low speeds, essential when inching around tight turns with 20-axle trailers. They had boxy cabs, rugged suspension, and just enough steel to make them feel indestructible. Hauliers who couldn't afford a full-spec Volvo or ERF often ran these with lighter heavy loads like fabricated steel, precast concrete, or power station pipework. They weren't glamorous, but they were surprisingly agile, economical on maintenance, and perfect for multi-stop hauls where reliability mattered more than luxury. Finally, the Scammell Crusader 6x4 ballast tractor. Introduced in the early 1970s, the Crusader was a leap forward from earlier Scammell designs. It came with a Cummins 14-litre NTC 335 engine producing around 350 horsepower, paired with a fuller 13-speed gearbox and double-drive rear axles. With a gross train weight capacity over 120 tons in its heaviest spec, the Crusader was often seen paired with girder frame trailers or platform combinations for moving generators, boilers, and transformers. What made it unique was the cab-forward design, providing better visibility and shorter length, which mattered on winding British B roads. It was a favourite of British nuclear fuels and heavy haul divisions of big national contractors. Scammell built them tough, and with the right trailer matchup, they could handle multi-day journeys hauling equipment that most people wouldn't dare shift on anything with tyres. These weren't just lorries, they were legends, steel-built, torque-loaded, and battle-tested on Britain's toughest roads. They shifted the unshiftable and hauled the kind of weight that made bridges sweat. From Scammell to Seddon, from Volvo Brutes to DAF-built Titans, these machines defined a generation of hard-haul grit. And for the drivers who tamed them, there was nothing quite like the feeling of rolling thunder under your boots and 100 tons behind you.